Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. Previously on The Insider, recorded live from B-Side, Scotland on the 20th of April 2018, lunch. Target was a global business headquarters. Recon showed they had turnstiles in reception. Back door also had turnstiles. I hate turnstiles. A friend told me how he'd bypassed turnstiles. I liked the idea, so I tried it. Midway through a lunchtime, I walked in off the street. I walked up to the turnstiles and then turned to the security operative and said, "Crap, I left my pass on the desk when I nipped out for lunch. Can you let me in?" People started forming in a queue behind me. The security guard didn't look sure. Applied pressure. "Come on, will you let me in? I'll be late for a meeting, I need to get in." The turnstile opened. I walked in. Chapter 1. Typically, after walking into an office, I'd find a place to plug my laptop in and hope I get an IP address. Then I'll fire up responder, and typically you get a hash or two. Here we have an example of what you get with the extract of the hash at the bottom, the username, and the domain name. To reverse the hash, I've always typically used hashcat. And here we have an extract from hashcat showing that the NTLM v2 hash that's been collected has been cracked, and there's the super strong password at the bottom. And then identify if the user has any local admin rights on any domain machine. For that, I've started using CME. Here's an example of CME where we've been passing out the username and the password, and it's found, you see the word pwned, it's found that user 1 against the IP address has access to the local admin. From that, I dump the local hashes, and there's an extract of the local hashes from the box. From that, I will pass the hash to all machines, and here's an extract from CME again, and you can see the multiple IP addresses which we now access using those local admin hashes. This is because people generally do a default build of a machine and then copy it over and over again. Microsoft doesn't salt the password hashes, as we all know, so the password hash can be used by Microsoft. So where it's found on one box, if that machine has been copied and cloned, you can use it on the other boxes and so on and so on. Following on from this, I hunt the DA. But this story is not about my hunts. It's about what your employees can do. My name's Neil Lyons. I work for Raytheon. Okay, let's start. So, picture a typical office. Default domain machines. So, what do you normally have on a default domain machine? Generally, you'll find that users are, in most places, given access to CMD, and they're given access to PowerShell. Now, I know a lot of you will be thinking, okay, who here is part of a blue team? Brilliant, this is good. I'm going to throw it out to the audience. Who thinks they're logging PowerShell use correctly? I've got like 2 hands now. Okay. So at the moment in the industry, in the community, call it what you like, a lot of people are saying that, and I think we've still got a few years to go. I think we get MS0867 still occasionally. So I think we can still use PowerShell. In theory, it's very, very, very easy to log and spot, which is why people are saying this. So what can a standard user do? Okay, any user with access to CMD or PowerShell can start a program. There you go. You can start MS Paint. Or they can also grab a DA or domain admin account. Back in 2014, Tim Meaden did a talk called Attacking Microsoft Kerberos, and from that, Kerberosting was launched. Any domain user can request a service ticket for all service accounts. Active Directory will return an encrypted ticket, which contains an NTLM hash, and service accounts are typically in the domain admin group. Originally, this was quite a complex exploit to do, and a lot of people thought I just can't be bothered to do it. But then Harmjoy released, it was included in PowerView, and I want to give you a quick walkthrough through it for those who haven't seen it or don't know how easy it is to do. So here's the basic of the commands. So you're requesting PowerShell. you're basically asking it to download and execute, or to download PowerView and execute this command function, invoke kubroast, and you ask it to output the format as a hash file. So I wanted to show you a video so you can see how quick it is to do. Here's that playing. There we go, playing. Right, so this is the one-liner. So in essence, any one of your users could go off to the internet and they could download this one-liner, copy and paste it into the machine and hit go, and we'll see what happens. Part of the reason for these videos as well is I like people to see how long it actually takes to do this. So presently now, this is communicating with the domain controller, and it's going, please send me your service hashes, your server usernames, and their correlating password hashes. And any standard user can do this. So it could be of concern to some people. And there we go, we got it. So there we got the username, and we've got the correlating password hash. Now, if I can make it easier, because videos are not easy to see, that's what was returned. So the username, domain name, followed by an extract of the hash. Now, I looked up the user, and it was user 1, and it was part of the domain admins group. Service accounts are generally, not all the time, but if you get, say, like 5 or 6 service accounts, you can probably guarantee that 2 or 3 of them are in the domain administrative group. And people don't want to be changing the passwords all the time on service accounts because that'll be a pain in the butt. So they generally have set the password once and they don't set it to expire in 90 days. So you can guarantee that there's a chance, well, we can reverse it. Anyway, so we're winning. Not quite that easy. We still need to reverse the hash. Now, this is something that I think is interesting. When you brute force accounts, you can obviously lock things out. When you rip a Kerberos ticket back and you've got it on your desk, it's in a text file or whatever you've saved it as. So it's offline. You can spend as long as you like. You can take it home and spend a month trying to reverse it if you want. The reality is a lot of service accounts that I've come across are generally arguably quite weak. I've seen password 1, all lowercase, as a service account for a domain administrative group that took all of 4 minutes to rip out someone. Plugging a laptop in, kubroasting, done. So here we have an extract from Hashcat, and you can see the type of hash it's identified. Well, you have to identify it, and there's the password and a slight extract of the hash at the bottom. So now, your everyday user, theoretically, potentially is part of the domain administrative group. So what are DA rights? Members of the DA group, and I apologise for having to do this, but not everyone knows, they have full control of the domain. By default, the domain admin group is part of the administrators group, which I'll get onto later, which is really interesting. They have access to all domain controllers, workstations, and servers, and all the containing data on these devices. So I think HR directories, which might be restricted to only 4 or 5 people. The domain admin may not be allowed access to it, but they can probably change the account of someone who can access it. Chapter 2. Okay, don't stress they don't have the skills, which to me is the same as saying it's okay to leave your front door under the mat, key under the mat, because no one's going to look. I've released a blog yesterday. I didn't advertise it on Twitter or anything, but it includes all the one-liners, including loads of other one-liners from PowerShell that I found really interesting. I'm just one of millions of people who release this stuff. Anyone can do this. You can just copy and paste it and drop it in. And now for some more quick PowerShell tricks. Again, using PowerView, created by Harmjoy. Invoke check local admin access. This was an interesting discovery. It finds whether you are a local admin on a box, which you could do with CMD, but it's nice to always have a PowerShell one-liner. So it responds by saying no. You can then start to, I was interested, could you use this to access other devices? And yes, surprise, surprise, Harmjoy's created it, so you can. So you can point at other devices to find out if you're a local admin on those. True. Which is great, because it's stealthy. It's like one machine after one after one, but it's quite time-consuming. So let's say you want to do it quickly. Here you go. Find local admin access. And that sprays out across the domain. It checks every single device, and it finds out which devices you are a local admin on. And you can see there's 2 machines. Okay, by the way, to any local group, simply by opening PowerShell and pasting the following. And that's what I needed to see. So to see if you're a local admin on any machine, that's all you have to do. Now, if you belong to the local admin group, you can laterally move. Now, this is what I was saying earlier about RDP. You might think, okay, we're not going to RDP, we're probably going to pierce exec or WMI. But RDP is a nice old school feature, and we will use it for lateral movement if we have to. And by default, you've probably got an RDP group, and only those members of it can access it. Unfortunately, so can your local admins and your domain admins, because it overrides that original group. So, looking there, and you can see that user 5 was a member of the local admin, so it could RDP, and it could pierce exec, and it could WMI. Okay, once you can move off a box, it's time to hunt for the DA. And for that, again, you can use Power View. You have the classic invoke user hunter. You can obviously bloodhound as well, but invoke user hunter is quite interesting. Here's the results from it. So user 1, he's discovered that user 1, which is a domain admin, is on that IP address. So hunt for the DA and see if the account belongs to a local machine. You have this. So invoke user hunters include -check access. So the response shows that there's the local admin, but unfortunately we're not a local admin on that machine. PowerShell is dangerous. Now, I was doing a lot of labbing for the last probably year on this, and the last sort of 3 or 4 months I've been really gearing up and doing loads and loads and loads more. And I discovered that user hunter was giving me inconsistent results. Let me give you the backstory. Right, hunting out users on a domain is tricky to do. Typically you need local admin or domain admin privileges, and if you can't get that, you're stuck. So I used to use SMB exec to hunt out users, and then I progressed to CME. But that also needs local admin rights. And what you need to do is rip out the local admin hash and then just add it, and that tool will pass that for you, and it sprays it out throughout the domain, and it'll log in and see if there's any domain admins on those boxes, and it tells you which box it's on. But let's say that your employee can't privesc. How can they hunt out the DA? So I thought about it. And I spend too much time at home thinking and troubling myself about things like this. Most people will be like, I don't care, I'll just do it another way. But no, I wanted to know the answer, so I carried on. So I Googled it, and it seems this is actually a really common request of Microsoft admins and pen testers. But I found nothing that would run without admin rights. So Microsoft doesn't have a tool built into Windows to actually tell you where the other users are. Now, there is ways to do it, but it requires local admin access generally, or a domain admin to log into each box, and then it can run the script, whatever you want, to retrieve that information. So I messaged my mate. Now, I generally turn to my friends after Googling. No one likes to hit your friend first. You always got to go to Google, try and figure it out yourself. And he just replied with this. It's great. He always helps me. Never gives me the quite exact answer, but he always gives me something that leads me to the answer. So I'd learned a new trick. So how does this work? Right, most domains, think of a typical domain, they'll have centralized SharePoint share server, generally on the DC, I find. Admins will commonly map their share drives to all of their employees. So when they first log in, the Z drive or S drive, or whatever will appear on their desktop or in their My Documents. There you go, to the share. And any domain user, this is an interesting find, any domain user can enumerate the share file, the share server, for a list of who's presently logged into it. So you can see the connections. Now, to do that, you just have to run this. So again, you'd copy and paste, drop it in, and it'll give you this as a response. Now, what is this? So basically, user 9, user 6, typically you would have, I don't know, on a normal domain, hundreds and hundreds of users. So you might have a list 100 long, and they're not all pretty colourful like this. I've done this just so you can hopefully see it better. But you can see there, user 9 is on machine ending, well, 192.168.1.11, and user 6 is ending on .10. Now, if you hit a share directory like this and you enumerate it, there's a good chance you might get a domain admin in there. So that is a way that a standard user can hunt out users without having local admin rights or domain admin rights, resulting in any domain account being able to hunt out most of the users. Right, chapter 3. Okay, who places one of these in a locked cage? One? This is good. Who encrypts, not the laptops, the physical machines? Who encrypts the hard drives? Good. Good, this is good. Right, what I'm going to show you here, think about a Windows PC, and you plug the USB stick into the front, and you're booting off it now. And if anyone doesn't really know the dangers why, well, this is why you want to encrypt your hard drive. Basically, you can mount a drive, and you can rip out files that are of interest to an attacker. If anyone's wondering, would my employee do this? I've done a lot of on-site social engineering where I've walked in off the streets, I've used Responder, it's not got me anywhere, and I've just thought, forget this, I'm getting nowhere. So pull out my USB stick, walk up to a machine that's not being presently used by someone, and rip out what I require this way. So if I can do it as a complete stranger in an organisation that should be spotting people, your employees can definitely do this. Secondly, you could also just rip out the hard drive and mount it that way. Multiple ways you could do it. I've also done that on an SE job when I didn't have my USB stick with me. So what I'm doing here, I've mounted the C drive. In Windows 10, I think it's got fast boot or fast mode or something like that. And you can't just mount a drive automatically. So you do need to have domain credentials then, but standard user credentials. And what you do is you plug a USB stick in, and you reboot the machine, and by rebooting it, it drops out of fast boot mode, and it allows you to then mount the drive. Right, so we've mounted the drive, which is System32, Windows System32 config directory. And people should have a good idea, some people have a good idea what I'm going straight for. I'm going for the SAM and the system file. Now, these two files together store your local administrative accounts. So this is of use to me because I can then pass the hash immediately afterwards. I'm probably giving away things. Right, so I'm copying the SAM and the system file back to the desktop. When I first did this, not that anyone's interested, but I think I was about 12 on my machine at home. It's such an old school trick this is, but it's still valid today. I'm zooming in, hopefully so people can see. Right, all I'm going to do is I'm going to reference the two files, and I'm going to use pwdump to reverse them. Not to reverse them, sorry, to combine them and create the hashes out of the two files, I should say. If someone who hasn't seen this before, it's interesting how quick it is. Done. So there we go, we've got the local hashes off a Windows box. So it took roughly about 2 minutes to gain access to a local admin hashes. So what can you do with them? You can take them home. Again, it's a file. You've now got a copy of that. And you can reverse it, spend all night, week, get yourself a decent graphics card. You do it in minutes. There you go. NTLM hash is very, very easy to reverse. Super strong password again. So with local admin access, what can you do? Well, they can install these. That would be the first thing I'd do if I had access to a machine with local admin. It's not stealthy. I'm not here to do a red team. I am a red teamer, but this is presently here. I'm just seeing how quickly I can compromise a domain. I'd probably fire up VirtualBox. I'd install Kali, and I'd use CME and just start spraying out those hashes. OK, if you can't reverse them, you can just simply pass the hash. Now, for this, I've discovered this script. I'll say who it is here. Kevin Robertson's invoke the hash, which is incredible. I was looking at PowerShell for a long time. And I kept thinking, I don't want to crack passwords. You can't always do it. I want to pass the hash. And then this was released. And it does exactly as you can see there. So you give it a target IP address. You give it the hash. And you give it the username. And here we're going to tell it to add the user called Pone and London 2018, add it to the local machine. If it accepts it, you get that. Command executed with service. And you now have a local account on that machine yourself. Right, chapter 4. I've seen plenty of clients attempt to restrict employees' access to CMD, PowerShell, and so on. Most pen testers enjoy breakout testing. I find it frustrating, but we do it. I'm going to quickly show you a few techniques which could be used by employees. Right, CMD is restricted. This is just great. Everyone loves Internet Explorer. Straight to options, Internet options, and come down to browsing history, click on settings, and go to view files. Bingo, we've got access to a directory. From there, you just find CMD, and there you go. Now, that obviously won't work where they're restricting you to actually start CMD. That only works when they're restricting you access to find it or be able to just instantly run it. And from CMD, you can then type PowerShell, and there you go. We now have PowerShell. Okay, restriction number 2. Okay. Right-click on the desktop, go to New, go to Text Document. Some people disable right-click options, really annoying, which probably means it's a good thing. If they do that, just go to Search, Notepad. People generally don't restrict access to things like MS Paint, Notepad, I don't know, Media Player. These are all things people think are safe. So you open up Notepad, and of course you can type in CMD exe there or PowerShell exe. Save it as a bat file, and save it to wherever you can save it to, often not the desktop in restricted environments, but you generally find somewhere you can write to. And there you go, you've got CMD that way. This is the final one. You've all would have seen this before, but it just amuses me. Right, so you open up MS Paint, and you create a very small picture. You go to Edit Colors, and you start adding your own custom colors, and then you add these other following colors. And there you go. So you've got yourself a beautiful palette, and there's the wonderful picture that you print off and put on your fridge. Now, if you save that as a BAT file and then run it, you get CMD. There's millions of ways, and these are low down for sort of savvy, elite ways. But there's millions of ways to access, and even if they've stopped access to CMD in PowerShell, there's always other ways around that as well. Right, chapter 5. Let me be blunt. Everyday IT admins should not be part of the DA group. What does Microsoft say about the DA group? No one can read that, so there you go. Enterprise admins, blah, 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 DAs should only be really used for the build at the very start of your domain and disaster recovery. Why? They have complete control over all domain controllers and everything. We've heard all this. Unfortunately, it's common to see accounts belonging to the DA group being used every day. I've regularly on internals found people using DA rights. They've actually elevated their rights to access something like a browser. Why? Because it bypasses the proxy restrictions if I run it as an admin. So how do you fix this? Well, firstly, you strip them of the domain admin rights, and you do delegated rights or delegated permissions, and I've heard it called other things. What does Microsoft say about delegated rights? There's the link if anyone wants to have a look. And this is it quickly. Basically, by properly delegating rights, you can enforce specified roles in the environment, limit the impact and likelihood of administrative error, and apply the principle of least privilege throughout your infrastructure. I thought, wicked, that's great. Really good. So I tried it. So here we go. I'm looking at the local group on my machine, and I'm looking at a domain group here. And you can see I've got domain admins, I've got domain users, I've got help desk. I'm trying to delegate things correctly. And I'm looking at the domain admins that are being assigned domain administrator privileges. I've got far too many there. But generally, you'll see most enterprises will have anywhere between 2 to 100. I'm going to use User Hunter, and it returns nothing. This is great. Delegation of privileges or rights has been done correctly, and there's no DAs. Winning. Right, so there's no domain admins. The red team goes home. The blue team claps. Game over. Right, introducing ACLs. Microsoft says an ACL is, this is really confusing when you read this, an access control list is a list of access control entries. Yep. Each ACE is an ACL. Oh, that's just confusing. Basically, you're delegating rights, and you're saying who can use what. Okay, I'm no expert of ACLs. This is definitely worth noting. I've only really started getting interested in the last probably 3 or 4 months, which is quite bad. Up until then, I've never had a problem getting domain admin. But I always think at some point someone's going to delegate rights correctly, and I might have a problem, so it's good to know. So they've delegated it correctly. There's no domain admins out there. Right. So let's go back to the domain users. Let's take a look at user 6. User 6 is just a domain user. There you go. You're a loser. You've got no rights. But wait, let's take a closer look. Using the invoke ACL scanner, again, just copying and pasting this in, it will go off and it'll show you all the users that have got extended rights. So we know that user 6, you can see there, does it say user 6 anywhere? Yeah, it does at the bottom, user 6, extended rights. So we know they've been delegated rights, or they can do something. And I feel like this has been a long chapter, so I want to conclude this quick, so here goes. Right, user 6 works for the IT team. It spends most of their day changing passwords and hating users. But user 6 is interesting because it's a standard user account that has been delegated the rights to change passwords, which is better than just being placed in the DA group. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is the account can change passwords, making user 6 a desired account. The red team come back and play. So how can you exploit user 6? First off, you'd have to target and capture the account. Now, there's multiple ways to do that. I discussed it earlier. You could look on a share file and hope that you could spot them somewhere. You could go up and rip out their local hashes and, I don't know, exploit it some way. You could use Mimikatsu for that. It wouldn't be a domain admin. Yeah, you could Mimikatsu. You could also use this, which is Responder for PowerShell. I do love SE. Right, so here is the one-liner. So invoke convey, console output, yes, yes, yes. And hey, user 6, just testing the new internal site works. Please test it by clicking here. A few seconds later, we get that because people like to help you. So there's user 6 name, there's the hash. Okay, so you reverse that, and then following that, you can then enumerate users who have local admin rights. And there we go. So get net local group, and there's the machine, and you can see there user 4 is a false. No, it's disabled, sorry. User 4 has rights. So using user 6, it's getting a bit confusing now. Using user 6 rights, you can change the password of user 4. So here I am as user 6, changing the password of user 4 who does have local admin rights. You can then use user 4's account, because you now have control of that, to laterally move. Right, finally to wrap up, delegations of rights is great, but you still need to respect the accounts. Chapter 6. Okay, this is a very quick chapter. People talk about automation. Will it affect the sec world? I think it will change things. Let's take a look. So typical internal compromise. Responder, reverse the hashes, look for shares, find out where the domain user is part of the local admin group, use that rights to compromise the machine, collect the local admin hashes, pass the hash, hunt the DA, win. Okay, this typical process takes between 30 minutes to 4 hours, sometimes very, very quick. You can sometimes just respond and get a DA immediately. Anyway, now you can automate this. So my friend sent me this message, you'll like this talk, and it comes from this talk. And the quick version is, Dan has released a script called Icebreaker. Has anyone here heard of Icebreaker? Cool. Someone said yes. It automates typical ways to pwn admins. It basically fires up Responder for you. It automates that for you. It comes with a 1,000,000 word list. It reverses the hash where it can with that. And then it looks to see if it can laterally move. If it can laterally move, it fires up Empire. If it can fire up Empire, it then fires up Death Star. You see where this is going. It then gets you DA. So I tried it in my lab. And here we go. It does other things as well. Worth watching the talk. It's very, very good. Okay, so I fired up Responder, and I made sure I got an SMB connection going, and there you go. So I got a user 3, and you can see the hash. It then reversed it for me automatically. And there you go. Super strong password again. Okay, it then killed Responder and moved on, and you saw it try NTLM relay. Then I noticed xterm open and Empire loaded, followed by Death Star. Everyone here knows what Empire is, but Death Star, you're shaking your head. Empire is a C2. Think of it as like Metasploit. It's a framework all in PowerShell. And you can use it for reverse connections. So you can send someone an email embedded with a link. When they click on it, it runs the PowerShell command that allows that to communicate back to Empire. You then control their computer remotely. I apologize, I just said everyone knows Empire, not everyone does, so sorry. Okay. Death Star automates the process of hunting out a domain admin. So if you were to run Empire combined with Death Star, Bloodhound is triggered. It will look at the results of Bloodhound. I believe this is how Death Star works. It will then look for the quickest route to domain admin, and it'll see if it has the rights, and it'll do it for you. Now, running Icebreaker, which combines Empire and also Death Star together, it took me around 15 minutes. Now, the reason why it took 15 minutes to actually find the domain admin is because it defaults to 10 minutes on one of the sections, on the responder section. Now, you can tune that down to as little a time as you need or require, but generally, the longer you run responder for, the more hashes you collect, so it increases your chance to compromise. But if I was to show off in this test environment, it could have been done in a minute. So it's gone from just running an automated script to getting domain admin, probably in under a minute. What I would say is I tried it again the next day and it's completely broken. So these things are not simple to use. Okay, so to install though, initially the employer would require a VirtualBox, Kali, which we discussed earlier, ways that they could get onto their machine, and YouTube, basically to watch the video. It's how I got it to work. Right, chapter 7. And I'm coming to the end now, so I apologise to anyone who's sitting there thinking, what is he talking about? Before I start this chapter, I need to share a backstory. I ignored PowerShell for a long, long time. I found it very, very painful to use. I found it a sea of red. Every error just was headbutting the screen because it was driving me insane. It dramatically slowed me down on internals. But people kept saying, you've got to try it, you'll love it, you've got to become PowerShell so you're elite. I gave up and I started to use it. Okay, so I started using it, so I gave it a go, and what I discovered is that basically to use it on an internal, you have to have domain access. You have to be joined on the domain to get the most out of it, would be the best way of describing it. Most of the scripts require you to be domain joined. So to get sort of domain access, what I used to do is get credentials while I was on an internal network, and then I would look for an RDP or a way to get access to a physical user's machine, use those credentials. There you go. And then I was told about this by someone. They went, oh, you don't have to do that. Add yourself, add a domain joined machine. Right, so here's a question. In this room, who has the rights to add a machine to the domain? Throw it out, anyone. Sorry? You'd hope. Anyone. This is it's not an odd one. It is a slightly odd one. The odd one is to remove a machine from the domain, you have to be an admin. Now, I think that's, what I think is odd is to add a machine, by default, you just be an any standard user. The reason why I think that's a bit odd, well, you wouldn't want people removing machines, because that could be really malicious, I suppose, from a service point of view. But what is odd is that you can add machines, because I still think it's malicious. So what I would do is, I would spin up a clean VirtualBox image, and I would use the credentials I'd gained to add that machine to the domain. I would use a clean image every single time, so respect their environment, and you'd look at the naming convention of their present machines, and you'd replicate it so it wouldn't stand out. And you'd obviously, in the report, you'd tell them what you've done, and you'd have a screenshot of it, and you would tell them exactly the machine to go off and delete after the test. But anyone can do it, where I've tried. You would be able to restrict this. But by default, any domain user can add a new machine. And this was, that discovery to me was a light bulb moment. I love those sort of moments when you think, wow, you can do that. So on internals, I started, there you go, adding a clean VB, and I started to live off the land. And now back to chapter 7. So I started thinking, knowing that any user can add a machine to the domain, how dangerous could it be for home workers? Who here is a home worker? Brilliant. Have they provided you, your employer provided you with a laptop? You got VPN access? Watch on. Okay, so typically home workers have VPN solution. Now this could be for any SSL vendor out there, I suppose, VPN. I'm not going to just attack any one particular vendor here, but I've used this one because it's a popular one, and I spent quite a long time as a network administrator, so I learned how to configure Cisco ACES and PICs before that. Right, so how do you connect to it? You add a URL, and it connects. This is the best bit. You don't have to use the provided client by default. You can just go into your own browser, you can type it in, and it will often let you connect that way. Or, as I discovered on Kali, you can use OpenConnect. So do an apt-get install OpenConnect, and then just put their HTTPS in, followed by the IP address or the domain name, and that's it, you've connected. You can then use domain credentials to connect. So as a standard user, you could install this on your own laptop that you control, and you can now add your own laptop. In essence, you can connect it to their network. Let's not say domain yet, we're not there yet. But you're starting to see where I'm going with this. So if you get access, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So what I discovered is people don't lock down SSL VPNs by default. I think Checkpoint do, but I can't confirm that. I need to spin up a virtualized Checkpoint to figure it out. Okay. So it got me thinking. You send your employees home with credentials and a VPN solution. So they could add their VPN client to their own laptop. There you go. Sounds dangerous. Yeah, it gets even better. Could I add a machine that I control over the VPN to the domain? This is when I started to get really interested. So I tried. Using my laptop, I connected it to a VPN. I pinged the DC. It worked. I was thinking, this is good. I then added the machine to the domain. My laptop then asked me to. When you first add a machine to a domain, you have to reboot it. A lot of you will know this here. Not everyone will. You have to reboot it. Looked promising, so I rebooted. And then I authenticated with the domain creds, and I got that. Now, if anyone can't see that, there's currently no logon servers. Some of you may be laughing now, you're not, but you might be inside, and saying such things as, yep, attempting to add a machine to the domain over a VPN, absolutely crazy talk, you can't do it. So I Googled it, and it seems the problem is, while you can connect to the domain, once you reboot, your VPN disconnects, and you can't log in to restart the VPN because you can't contact the DC. So it's a chicken and egg moment, and I came up with this. It's my professional slide, the Microsoft domain hell loop. To authenticate the first time, you need to access the DC. You access the DC, you need VPN access. To start the VPN, you need to log in. You can't log into the DC, so you can't start the VPN. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And I did what most people should do, give up, no, I went insane. And of course, Microsoft had the answer. And there it is. It's absolutely that. It's beautiful. Can anyone see what it is? That one there. Brilliant. Someone spotted it. If you click down there, it will start up their VPN. So then you can then authenticate. So Microsoft's got an answer, which is genius. Absolute shame no one uses it. So someone's about to say, I use it, but I haven't come across anyone who does. So I went insane more. I phoned up my mate again, and this time he just laughed at me when I told him what I was trying to do. Yeah, time to admit defeat. I do occasionally have to give up on a project, but then it hit me. Actually, this is really, really, really easy to do. It sort of woke me up at 4 in the morning. It's really trivial. I can't believe I hadn't thought of this before. Hours, days, weeks, months later, 2 physical machines built, loads of virtual machines built. I think over the last 6 months, I've probably added close to 3,000 or 4,000 machines to a domain controller. A USB cable ordered from China. 3 weeks later, that turned up. And finally, an Acer firewall configured, and I was ready to go. And of course, one unhappy wife. Apparently, that is not how a dining room table should look for weeks. And the result. Right, so here I am on my desktop of the laptop that I own, and I'm connecting to the corporate-style VPN. And super secure username and password. Thankfully, you won't be able to see it from where you are. And it's authenticating. Now, you might quite quickly realize what the answer was, because here I am on a virtual machine. So this virtual machine is connected over NAT. To my physical machine, it's connected to the VPN. You've got the answer. But we'll still watch the video because I've got time to kill. I'm almost at the end. So here I am. I'm adding it to a domain. And worth noting again, I'm a standard user at this point, so I'm not a domain admin. I have sped some of the video up, so you're not going to go through the pain of seeing it completely time out and everything. Right, and there we go. It's asking me for the creds, so putting in standard user creds. Welcome to the domain. There we are now. I'm not a fan of live demos. It goes wrong. So I'm a video person. I apologise about that. Right, so we're rebooting. Now, of course, this is the bit. My machine is still connected over the VPN. So we're now rebooting a machine. And why is this actually lethal? Because, okay, you lose local admin rights of that machine once you've added it to the domain, I discovered. But you had local admin rights before, and you can install anything you like on that virtual machine. So I can think of a million things that would be malicious that you wouldn't want on your network, which could now be on your network. And we hit go. And what I did want to show is to emphasize that, I wanted to show you something here that's a bit odd. This is, remember, it's a Windows 7 machine. Now, you can't probably see it here, but I'm now accessing Active Directory tools on a Windows 7 machine. And I'm accessing users, and I can enumerate all the domain users visually. And all the machines. Okay, some of you may be thinking, how did you get AD tools on a Windows machine? I love labbing, I do it all the time. I don't do a lot of capture the flags, I'm not a capture the flag person. I'm the sort of person who likes to build things and just do it for a giggle. Exchange for me is a Friday night. It helps me to discover things. And I came across this, RSAT. Has anyone used this? Brilliant, brilliant. I'm new to the game, new to the party. It gives you Active Directory tools on on a Windows 7 machine, Windows 8, Windows 7 onwards. There you go. So, recap, employee now has a virtual machine, they control on your domain remotely. They can install anything they like before they add it, and then use those tools on your domain. Right, my name's MyExploit2600 on Twitter. Any questions?